Hello, my name is Sally Burrows, and today I will be sharing my SDAIE strategy with you all. The target class is a 6th grade Spanish class, and the unit is on comida, food. With speaking Spanish and teaching in a Spanish-speaking classroom, the idea and understanding of all students as being language learners is really key in developing any strategy or activity that I will be utilizing. And so today, the lesson will be on teaching Spanish foods, Spanish common foods, and also the meal times that go with those foods, in addition to continuing our unit on Mexico and teaching traditional Mexican dishes so that students will be able to identify what foods those items are, compare traditional Mexican meals to their own culture and experiences, and demonstrate their knowledge of the vocabulary learned through engaging in the classroom activities and projects. The students are at a speech emergence level of acquisition, which means that they have good comprehension. They could engage in conversation, but they still speak simple sentences and make common grammatical errors. And so with that, I really want to engage and utilize that both written and verbal forms of communication. So that brings us to the language objectives, and that includes students will be able to identify both in written form and verbally each Spanish name for common foods, meal times, and traditional meals of the target language culture, and students will share their likes and dislikes using the Spanish food terminology. The academic content objective is that students will be able to engage in classroom activities utilizing the key concepts, which illustrates their understanding of the vocabulary. Speaking of vocabulary, some of the vocabulary terms that I will be using today include desayuno, almuerzo, cena, leche, carne, cereal, pan, and so on. Today's lesson will begin with an anticipatory set in which I engage students' prior knowledge. And I'll do that through a quick writing activity. And so I will address students in Spanish, and I will ask them, what is your favorite meal? What are your favorite foods? And so with that, they will jot down. I'll give them 1 minute to write down everything that they have going on in their mind of what their favorite meals might be. The second part of this procedure and this activity is for them to share one thing that they have written, not the entire thing, but one thing with the rest of the class, practicing using that terminology. And so I will explain to the class that the purpose of the lesson is to learn and identify common foods in Spanish, meal times, and various traditional Mexican dishes. I will engage students, like I mentioned beforehand, by asking what their favorite foods are, so drawing that personal interest in so that they already have that connection with the lesson before I go into teaching any of the vocabulary items. I'll transition into the teacher input portion of the lesson by displaying food on the PowerPoint presentation behind me and also writing the Spanish and English form along with it. And so I will first model the correct pronunciation of each of the food items, and then I will have the class repeat after me. And so we'll do that a couple of times so that the students know how to pronounce it and they feel comfortable with the pronunciation of the word. For example, I'll have a picture of desayuno, and so that's breakfast. And so I'll have a picture of, eggs, bacon, orange juice, and I'll have the word down here, desayuno in Spanish, and then the English translation with a graphic representation along with it, and then I'll say desayuno, and then I'll have the class repeat desayuno. And so we will continue that along the entire way so that students understand what is going on. I will additionally have realia come in, and so that will just be different things. I'll have a cereal box when we're learning about cereal. I'll have bread when we're learning about pan. And so the more non-linguistic aids, the better. And so after we go through each of the vocabulary terms, I'll transition into the guided practice portion of the lesson, and it's a game called the fly swatter game. And so in this game, I will have 16 blocks that have each an image of one of the vocabulary words that we have learned. I'll have 2 students come up. I'll hand them both fly swatters that have never been used. And with that, they will swat the word that I say in Spanish. And whoever does it the fastest and correctly gets a point for their team. And so I'll say, for example, carne. And the students are up here, and 1 student from each team will be up here. And then the first one to swat, lightly, not really hard, carne, meat, correctly and the fastest gets a point for their team. This is just a fun way to engage students in utilizing their comprehension of the vocabulary and for each student to have that turn to work cooperatively with their groups. After the guided practice portion of the lesson, we'll transition into the independent practice. And so this is a fun one. For those students that like to work independently, for those students that are creative, we will be making visual dictionaries. And so basically what each student will be doing, each student will be given pieces of paper, construction paper, and they will draw their own graphic representation of each of their vocabulary terms, in addition to putting the Spanish and English word for each of the terms. And so by the end of the class, each student will have their own visual dictionary so that they could share it, they could use it, they could refer back to it, and it's just a useful tool to utilize all three modalities. So they're kinesthetically learning, they're audibly learning, in addition to visually throughout the entire lesson. And so with that, I will close the class with displaying 5 words that are scrambled up, so 5 of their terms scrambled up. For example, arroz would be something like rosa, and they would have to quickly, as their exit ticket, write out what each word is, descrambled in Spanish. And so this is just a fun way for students to learn just in a different way, and not just writing down, rote memorization, writing down notes, lecture style. And so I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.